Teslas are being torched across the country. Dealerships shot up and set on fire. Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
What if we told you that Tesla, one of the most powerful and popular companies in the world, has just been excluded from a government stimulus program in Canada? And not just excluded, but actually accused of manipulating tens of millions of dollars in subsidies. Now imagine that this is all part of a growing trade conflict involving not only Canada and the United States, but also the European Union, China, and the world's biggest auto companies. This is not just a scandal. This is a turning point that could forever change the balance of power in the global auto industry. And it all started with one sudden decision.
We've accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started.
He praised all the domestic actions he has taken so far on immigration.
And I deployed the U.S. military and border patrol to repel the invasion of our country.
And spending cuts.
We are draining the swamp. It's very simple.
Tesla will no longer receive a dime from the Canadian government. The electric car subsidy program has been frozen, millions of dollars in payments have been cancelled, and a formal investigation has been launched against the company. Why? According to the authorities, because of the suspiciously massive sale of cars, which were allegedly sold every 30 seconds through 4 dealerships. Officials saw this as a scheme aimed at aggressively extracting profit from the state budget. And now Elon Musk's company is in the crosshairs. But this isn't just a dispute over subsidies. This is a fierce political and economic conflict amid a new trade strike from Donald Trump, who imposed 25% tariffs on car imports. The Canadian government retaliated, and the first victim was Tesla. A coincidence? Hardly. Especially if you consider that Elon Musk is one of Trump's closest supporters and has publicly interfered in political processes in both the US and Europe more than once.
KTLA Samantha Cortese joins us live with more on the wave of vandalism in protest of Elon Musk and his role in Washington. Sam?
Hi, Sharon, Micah. The ATF and FBI are collaborating with federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate acts of domestic terrorism surrounding Teslas.
The result? A sharp drop in Tesla shares, protests in Canada, attacks on car dealerships, and a barrage of criticism from world leaders. The European Commission has already condemned the US actions, Brazil has warned of the threat to the global trade order, and German manufacturers have announced the start of a new phase of the tariff war. And all of this is against a backdrop of plummeting Tesla sales in Europe, the US, and rising competition from China. This is more than a single-brand crisis. It is the first call that Tesla's golden age may be coming to an end. What will happen next? Will Musk be able to outplay his opponents, or will he be cornered for the first time? And most importantly, how will these events affect the global market, where electric cars were about to become the standard? Today we'll tell you all about it. From Tesla's first steps in Canada to closed cabinet meetings, from manipulative strategies to international statements. This isn't just news. This is a moment where history is changing before our eyes. Transport Canada has done something that even Tesla's most ardent critic didn't expect. The country that for years has given millions of dollars to subsidize electric car sales has suddenly severed ties with the industry's most powerful player. Officially, because of the company's manipulative behavior, unreasonably inflated claims for payments, and according to the government, an attempt to use the public system to its advantage. Regardless of the reasons, the consequences have been staggering. The electric vehicle incentive program, aimed at encouraging environmentally friendly vehicles, has been temporarily suspended specifically for Tesla. All of the company's applications were sent for individual review, and the $43.1 million Canadian dollars that Tesla had hoped to receive in the March report alone was frozen. This wasn't just an administrative move, it was a signal.
Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged, there's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
The decision came immediately after a closed-door meeting of the Canadian cabinet, which was urgently convened by Prime Minister Mark Carney. On the same day, he said the tariffs imposed by the United States on the Canadian auto industry were a direct attack on the country's economic sovereignty and promised that the response would not just be tough, but strategic. Tesla turned out to be the first and perhaps the most high-profile target. Officially, the government cited the company's suspicious behavior as the reason. In just 1 week in March, Tesla applied for subsidies on nearly 9,000 cars sold in 4 showrooms, with a sales density of 1 car every 30 seconds. Such numbers raised suspicion, even among loyal politicians. On the sidelines of the Department of Transportation, people started talking about a potential scheme to cash in on the government's budget, and the reports included internal dealer documents suggesting that many of these sales may have been temporary registrations that were not confirmed by the transfer of the car to the owner. In response to the government's actions, the head of Tesla's Canadian operations filed a complaint with the Federal Administrative Court, arguing that the ban violated fair competition rules. However, the complaint was provisionally dismissed as legally untenable. Behind the scenes, there was a much more intense struggle. Representatives of Tesla tried to organize an urgent meeting with Transportation Minister Chrystia Freeland, but the ministry refused. Meanwhile, additional details began leaking to the press. One of the internal reports, allegedly compiled by Deloitte analysts commissioned by the government, claimed that Tesla not only abused the subsidy program, but also purposefully understated the technical specifications of some models to formally fit within the government limits.
Canada, the largest supplier of steel to the U.S., slapping new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods that are sold in Canada. And the 27 countries of the European Union imposing retaliatory tariffs on up to $28 billion worth of U.S. goods sold in Europe, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Kentucky bourbon. President Trump with the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House today. The president suggesting his tariffs won't stop here, saying, "Of course, I'm going to respond." And tonight, right here, the new poll showing 56% of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. The number's even worse now on the president's tariffs.
Sources close to the government say that the decisive moment was the appearance of a new version of the Tesla Model 3, a modification with noticeably limited mileage. Technically suitable only for inner-city travel, this model was hardly advertised, but was actively applied for subsidies, with exact compliance with the requirements of the program. As a result, it accounted for more than 60% of all Tesla applications in March. An official at the Canadian Consumer Protection Agency, who wished to remain anonymous, said that Tesla created a paper model that exists only on charts to siphon off millions from the budget. And if this story started as a local dispute between the corporation and the agency, within days it turned into a political crisis. The unexpected intervention of US President Donald Trump added a new, international dimension to the situation. His announcement to impose 25% tariffs on cars and auto components from Canada was the trigger for retaliatory measures. Moreover, according to the Globe and Mail, in an internal meeting with economic advisors, Trump allegedly called Tesla a key leverage point for Canada, hinting that Elon Musk's actions could help soften Ottawa's position. Musk was rumored to have participated in the meeting remotely. Immediately afterward, a post appeared on his personal X, formerly Twitter, page calling Canada's actions an attempt to sabotage American progress on electric mobility. The Canadian media and political opposition took these words as direct pressure on the national government. Several MPs filed requests to Parliament, demanding to find out if there are informal arrangements between Tesla and the White House. There is no official evidence of this yet, but suspicions were reinforced when, the day after Musk's words, a group of U.S. senators from the Republican Party suddenly asked Congress to renegotiate trade terms with Canada in the auto industry, referring to Tesla as a strategically significant manufacturer in the report.
We begin with the president's trade war escalating tonight. This evening, the retaliation against the United States, Canada, and the European Union responding quickly, just hours after President Trump's 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States.
Canadian society wasn't left out either. Within a week of the subsidy suspension announcement, more than a dozen protests, both in support of and against the government, took place across the country. In Montreal, activists staged a sit-in outside a Tesla car dealership. In Ontario, unknown assailants damaged more than 80 cars in a dealer's parking lot, slashing tires and scratching bodies. This is no longer just a political fight. It is the beginning of a conflict that affects national identity and economic sovereignty. The irony is that until 6 months ago, Tesla was one of the symbols of the government's environmental strategy. In 2023, the Canadian Department of Energy called the company the flagship of a green future. Now the same company is accused of trying to drain the government fund and of creating economic pressure through its partnership with the American establishment. All this is fueled by the personality of Elon Musk himself, whose political antics, statements against European leaders and sympathies for extreme right-wing parties increase the antagonism between him and the governments of democratic countries.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them, that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
The system proved vulnerable to Tesla's scale. By 2024, the company had become the largest recipient of EV subsidies in Canada, receiving more than $713 million, more than all other automakers combined. And that's while Ford, Hyundai, and even Canadian startups like Electromotive were also active in the market, promoting their own, albeit modest, electric vehicle project. Such distortions have caused increasing dissatisfaction, both within the relevant ministries and among economists. In December 2024, a report by the Ontario Finance Authority explicitly stated that an imbalance in the distribution of incentives contributes to the budget's dependence on one company. And in January 2025, New Democratic Party MP René LeBlanc called Tesla a budget parasite operating under instructions in an interview with the CBC.
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. There are a lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK, where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
One of the most controversial points was the dramatic increase in Tesla applications in early 2025. From 300 in November 2024 to 5,800 in February, the jump was so rapid that internally, the Department of Transportation began to suspect a massive centralized operation to siphon off the maximum amount of subsidies through technical loopholes. Internal documents leaked to the press through insiders confirmed that some regional Tesla warehouses were storing hundreds of identical models without VIN codes, registered as temporarily transferred to customers. Legally, this allowed payments to be applied for even though the cars never physically left the parking lots. Perhaps this whole system would have continued to work had it not been for the political escalation between Canada and the US discussed earlier. The Canadian government's decision to exclude Tesla was the culmination, but by no means the last act of this drama. As soon as the subsidies were frozen, Tesla changed its strategy. Already in early April, the company's regional offices began urgently registering new legal entities, on behalf of which applications to the EIS system began to arrive again. This maneuver was unofficially called Grey Flow, and it became the subject of a new, already criminal investigation, which the ministry launched under pressure from the Parliamentary Committee on Public Finance.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
Meanwhile, Tesla continued to use every opportunity to put pressure on Canada. According to Global Market Weekly's investigative journalism, in early April, the company, with the support of the US lobbying agency Woodhouse Strategies, launched a campaign to influence Canadian parliamentarians. The editors had at their disposal a list of 27 members of the federal parliament who were allegedly sent presentations explaining the negative consequences of Tesla's exclusion from the EYES program for the Canadian economy, formally as part of an open dialogue, unofficially as a tool of pressure. Against this background, Chinese manufacturers BYD, Speng, NIO began to expand aggressively into Europe. Their models were cheaper, more technologically advanced, and offered with flexible payment programs. While Tesla maintained a premium price tag, competitors offered electric cars 25 to 30% cheaper, but with similar features. The BYD Han was particularly successful, overtaking the Model 3 in sales in Spain and France in March. In the UK, NIO signed a contract with the government to supply a fleet of vehicles for public services, officially beating Tesla in the tender. So the pressure on Tesla has been twofold, from politicians and from competitors. Musk, being in the midst of several crises at once, chose an attack strategy: public statements, threats of lawsuits, attempts to reorganize the business model. But according to observers, even he could not help but feel that the familiar landscape was crumbling. What seemed eternal, Tesla's dominance in the world of electric cars, its unique role in the state agenda, turned out to be fragile. And increasingly the question was being asked, was Tesla facing the most serious threat in its history?
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
The reasons were not just numbers, but also image. The situation around Elon Musk played a key role. His open support of far-right politicians, his participation in discussions on European migration policy, and his repeated statements against green bigotry put the company in a difficult position. Environmental organizations, including Greenpeace Europe and Germany's Deutsche Umwelt, announced a boycott of Tesla, arguing that the company has lost its moral right to represent the future of sustainable energy. This was accompanied by a sharp decline in corporate partnerships. Europe's largest leasing company, Autobridge, refused to buy Tesla cars, replacing its entire fleet with Chinese and German electric models. Against the backdrop of falling sales and deteriorating reputation on the European continent, Tesla failed to maintain its position in the United States. In January 2025, new registrations fell by 11% compared to the same month last year. The Model 3 and Model S saw a particularly strong drop, minus 17.4% and 31.2%, respectively. Even the Model X, which was previously seen as the company's flagship SUV, was losing ground. Sales fell to 12,000 units, which hasn't happened since its launch. According to the analytical platform Autoscope, the main reason was the growing competition from Hyundai, Ford and Rivian, which actively developed the service infrastructure and staked on a more flexible pricing policy. At the same time, Tesla, despite the decline in demand, refused to revise prices for a long time, relying on the strength of the brand. In reality, many consumers preferred less scandalous alternatives.
Tesla shares have slumped by more than 9% amid a fall in sales in Europe. The electric vehicle maker posted lower sales across 5 European countries, including France and the UK. Joining us now to discuss this is CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio. Remy, why do we believe these sales are dropping? What's driving that?
Sure. Well, Errol, basically what Elon Musk has been talking about over the past, say, few months, ever since Donald Trump's election back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration, some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
In the international arena, meanwhile, a different kind of pressure was building up. Chinese manufacturers BYD, Speng and NIO launched an aggressive offensive on the North American market. In March, BYD announced the opening of a plant in Mexico, with a capacity of 300,000 cars per year, with the Dolphin model promised to cost 30% less than the Model 3. At the same time, Speng signed an agreement with a Canadian consortium on local assembly of electric cars in the province of British Columbia, promising to create up to 1,500 jobs and thereby play a contrast with Tesla, which was accused of avoiding social responsibility. Moreover, according to unconfirmed reports, the Canadian government plans to give Speng access to the same EV subsidy program from which Tesla was previously excluded, a move that could be a real humiliation for Musk. This situation begs the question, what to do next? Tesla has two paths, either aggressive price cuts to wrest customers away from the Chinese, or maintaining its premium positioning, even at the cost of a temporary drop in demand. The first path threatens to erode profits and weaken the brand. The second, loss of market share. Within the company itself, according to rumors, disagreements have begun. Part of the management, including the head of sales in Europe, Michael Lehman, insists on price regrouping, while Musk, according to insiders, is sure that people buy Tesla for technology, not for the price. In parallel, the company is preparing a legal response to Canada. Tesla's legal team has already filed a preliminary motion with the WO Arbitration Commission, arguing that the exclusion from the government program contravenes free trade rules. However, lawyers for the Canadian government said that a company that manipulates budgets and acts contrary to the principles of fair allocation of resources cannot expect international protection. This litigation is unlikely to be resolved quickly, and in the meantime the market is reacting to the uncertainty. Internally, Tesla is discussing cost-cutting measures, including a partial suspension of the production line at its Fremont plant and scaling back pilot projects in Europe. Despite the crisis, there remain those who believe in the company's future. Some investors call the current downturns an entry point for long-term growth, citing Tesla's strong positions in autonomous technology, neural networks, and energy solutions. For example, in March, the company demonstrated a new full self-driving 3.0 architecture unit, which developers claim is capable of adapting to traffic situations faster than a human. It also continues to invest in the Tesla Energy project, aimed at decentralizing power supply in private homes, a direction that, according to analysts, can compensate for the fall in demand for cars.